Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Preeti madam.
Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon. Murtuza sir.
Yes, so I welcome all the participants to this second webinar in the bank audit series. We have with us Chairman of WIRC, CA Lalit Bajaj. We have immediate past Chairman, CA Preeti Savla. We also have the Banking Committee Chairman and Chairman of Vikasa, Hitesh Pomalji, and the learner speaker, Dhananjay ji. So let me now request Preeti Madam to briefly address the gathering. Madam, over to you, Preeti.
Thank you, Secretary WIRC, C. Murtuza Kachwala, Chairman C. Lalit Bajaj, Vikasa Chairman C. Hitesh Pomal, who is also the Chairman of Banking and Insurance Committee, and the Speaker for the session, C. Dhananjay Gokhale. I, on behalf of the WIRC, welcome all of you to this webinar on the Bank Branch Audit Series. And today's session, friends, as you are knowing, lot of webinar series we have already started with, which will definitely benefit all of you in this quarantine and COVID-19 situation. Not taking much of your time because chairman is already there to give the brief of about the WIRC. But as regards to today's session, about the IRAC norms, friends, the recommendation of Narasimha Committee on financial sector reforms in 1991 and which has been implemented by in the year 1993. These are about the IRAC norms and prudential accounting norms, and which covers recognition, asset classification, and provisioning norms. And this is the most important area when we are conducting the bank branch audit. So, friends, this asset classification, all of you are aware about the basic classification with these IRAC norms, that standard assets are classified into standard, substandard, doubtful, and bad debts. And income recognition, the interest reversal, how it is to be done, and how much provisioning, 10, 20, 30, 50%, 100% in each case. That will be taken in detail along with the case studies by our well-known speaker, C. Dhananjay Gokhale. And friends, we are very eagerly waiting to hear to C. Dhananjay Gokhale. And friends, with this webinar series, and with this, in this COVID, the bank audit due dates for conducting the audit has also been extended, and the new dates are already, some of the banks have already given the new dates, and few banks will be giving the new dates soon, and allotment letters have already been sent by the banks to various firms. And in this situation also our learning is on, and with this learning in this situation, I'm very hopeful we will be conducting in, this bank branch audit in better way. And the new norms which have also been come, that 3 months extension is given, so that also will be covered by how to see that situation. And friends, I really thank Hitesh Pomal and Murtuza Kachwala for organizing this webinar series on the bank branch audit. And we have series till 5th of May, I understand. And various topics are covered. Stay in touch with us. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Stay in touch and stay safe. Stay at home. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Preeti. Now I request the Chairman WRC, Lalit Bajaj, to address the gathering, please. Lalit bhai, over to you.
Thanks, Murtuza bhai. Let me welcome today's speaker, Dhananjay Gokhale, once again. Sir, it's great you are sparing your time, which you had to spend with your family. I believe all of us are getting prepared for bank audit to be continued, I think so, post say 25th of this month. A couple of things which I would like to share as far as activities at WRC and ICI is concerned. We are coming out with a concept paper on work from home in COVID scenario. I believe as far as bank audit are concerned, this concept paper will be really of help to each one of us, and we will be pleased to share with each one of you the concept paper which we are coming out with. As far as bank audits are concerned, Hitesh Pomal is chairing banking committee, and he is taking the initiative of coming out with a detailed checklist to be used by the audit team on bank audit. And I believe for the coming month, we will be able to perform our duty as a statutory auditor of bank very well with this checklist. As far as our e-learning is concerned, let me share with all of you that at ICI we have a digital hub wherein there are a lot many lectures, and there are a lot many materials available wherein every member can reach out and go through it to enrich their knowledge and be better equipped to provide services to the members. So I request all the members, whatever help you need as far as education or seminar is concerned, we are ensuring that in the digital hub we are trying to create module for each and every subject. Please take benefit of that and do give us suggestions what all additions we need to make there itself. One more thing which I wanted to share with all of you is we have come up with a help desk at WIRC. The reason of this help desk is that the procedural issues which members and students are facing, whether it is related to SSP portal or whether it is related to any other matter related to procedures at ICI, we are looking forward that we can channelize the issues of our members and students and put forth in a consolidated way to ICI so that we can get best of the responses from ICI. So I would request all of you that whatever you feel you have to raise to ICI, go through that help desk and raise a token on that. We will be more than happy to help you, come out and help you. With this, I once again thank each one of you and wish you happy learning. Back to Murtuza.
Thank you, Lalit Bhai, for your welcome address. Now, Hitesh Bhai, I request you to introduce the speaker and then we can get started. Hitesh Bhai, over to you. Hitesh Bhai, are you there?
Yeah. Thank you, Murtuza bhai. Thank you, Preeti madam, as well as Chairman Lalit bhai, for your sharing of thoughts with the participants. Good afternoon, all participants. And first of all, welcome all of you for the second day of this series on webinar on bank branch audit. And today we have with us a very learned speaker, CA Dhananjay Gokhale sir, to enlighten the members with his expertise on the most important subject, that is IRAC on advances, with practical studies on NPA. CA Dhananjay Gokhale sir is a commerce graduate and a practicing chartered accountant since last 22 years. He is a founder partner of the firm Messrs. Dhananjay J. Gokhale and Company, who is specialized in the providing management consultancy and auditing and assurance services in the banking sector. He is a regular speaker at the various bank branch audit seminar on statutory and concurrent audit across the various regions and branches of ICI. He is a member of expert panel constituted by the AASB of ICAI for the addressing the bank audit queries of the members since financial year 2011-12 till date. He was a co-opted member of AASB of ICAI for 2018-19 and was nominated as a subgroup member of Banking Insurance and Pension Committee of WRC of ICAI for 18-19. He was a convener of the study group formed for the ICAI guidance note on the bank audit of the banks for 2019 edition. He has authorized articles in ICAI magazine, ICAI guidance note on bank audit of banks of 2016, 17, 18 and 19 editions, manual on concurrent audit of banks and referral materials published by WRC on the statutory bank branch audit. So he will be sharing his views and thoughts, and he will enlighten us through his presentation for the very most important subject for bank branch, that is IRAC norms on advances. Sir, we welcome you on behalf of WRC as well as on behalf of all the participants. And now I request you to please take charge of the session, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Hitesh bhai.
Komalji.
Yeah. Dhananjay ji, you can go on till 3:15, 3:30, and after that, the Mishra ji will share the screen, the questions on his screen. You can read and you can answer the questions as well.
Sure,
Over to
no
you,
problem.
sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you, especially the management committee of WRC, and thank you, Komalji, for introducing me. As requested by you, I'm first playing the video clip, a short clip of Ethical Standard Board. So once that clip gets over, I will start with the normal presentation part. Good afternoon to everyone. Now we'll start off with the IRAC norms, and I'll be taking up NPA case studies. Now, before I take up the case studies, I thought that we'll just have a glance over the major guidelines under IRAC norms. Subsequent to that, we'll discuss about the relief to MSME borrowers, which is granted by the recent RBI circular of dated February. Then we'll discuss about COVID-19 regulatory package, which was announced on 27 March 2020. And also, I will just make a passing reference to the RBI circular dated 7 June 2019, which is talking about prudential framework for resolution of stressed assets. Now there are a couple of circulars which you need to be having handy with you when you are starting off the checking of NPA accounts or other classification of advances. The first one is the master circular dated 1st July 2015 on IRAC norms. Second one is relief measures to the banks in by the banks in areas affected by natural calamities, direction 2018. This is related to the relief measures which the bank can announce to the borrower accounts which are under agricultural advances wherein the natural calamity has affected that area. Another important circular is 7 June 2019 circular, which talks about the prudential framework for resolution of stress asset. Now, as far as this particular circular is concerned, this circular is talking about the advances accounts which are having exposure more than 1,500 crores. Below that, the RBI had specified that they will be issuing certain guidelines which they haven't yet issued. So this circular is limited to the extent of accounts which are having exposure above 1,500 crores. Then another circular which has got issued by RBI during the year is relief to MSME borrowers, which is dated 11th February 2020. It is in extension to the earlier circulars. The first circular was issued in February 18. It was followed by circular in June 18, and then there was a circular of 1st January 2019. So 11 February 2020 is an extension given to the circular of 1st January 2019. Then we are having the recent circular, COVID-19 circular, which has got issued. Besides that, there is an old circular of Reserve Bank of India, which is talking about early warning signals. Now, as far as early warning signal circular is concerned, even though that circular is particularly not applicable directly for NPA classification or identification, early warning signals list out some 40 plus areas or signals wherein these are considered as early signs of weaknesses in accounts. So an auditor can very well use this early warning signal circular for the purpose of monitoring of advances and commenting upon that. And in case if you happen to see certain early warning signals in an account, as a statutory auditor, you can go into details about it, and by in-depth analysis, then you can decide about the classification of advance. Now we'll just cover couple of things, kind of a overview of IRAC norms. As far as term loans are concerned, as all of you are aware, in case of term loans, if interest and installments remains overdue for a period of more than 90 days, then the account will be getting classified as NPA, except in cases which are given in para 2.1.3, which talks about the interest being not paid. Now, para 2.1.3 is limited to the extent of the accounts wherein only interest is payable. So wherever the principal amount is payable, this para is not applicable. By way of this para, there is a relaxation which is given by RBI, that in case of accounts wherein only interest is due, if the interest is not paid in subsequent 90 days from the end of that particular quarter, then that account will turn into an NP account. So when we are talking about March 20, we have to refer to the last but one quarter, that is December quarter. So the interest which is accrued and due during the December quarter, that is for October, November and December month interest, if it is not getting paid in the subsequent 90 days, that is from 1st January till 31st March, then that account will turn into an NP account. As far as agricultural advances are concerned, in that case, if interest or installment, if it remains overdue for two crop seasons for short duration crop, or if it remains overdue for a period of one crop season for long duration crop, the account is required to be classified as NPA. As far as CCOD accounts are concerned, the account will be marked as NPA if it satisfies one of the three conditions which are specified by RBI to classify that account as out of order. So the first condition is that if the account is continuously in excess of DP or limit, whichever is lower, then in that case, the account will get marked as NPA on 91st day. Second condition is that as on a cutoff date. So when you are talking about the audit of 31st March 2020, so as on 31st March 2020, if there are no credits in the account in last 90 days, then the account will turn into an NPA account, even though the account might be within the limit. And the third condition is that whatever interest is debited in the account in last 90 days, if the credit summation in last 90 days is not more than interest debited in that particular account in the same period, then the account will turn into an NP account. So let me just give you an example to elaborate this point further. So let's presume that there is a 10 rupees of interest which is getting debited for every month. So for January, 10 rupees is debited, February 10 rupees is debited, and March 10 rupees is debited. So in all, the debit summation of interest is 30 rupees. So if you're having a credit summation in excess of 30 rupees, the account will be classified as PA. In case if the credit summation is lesser than 30, then the account will be classified as NPA. Now here the concept is about matching of credit summation with interest which is debited in the account. The concept is not about servicing of interest. So servicing of interest doesn't play any role as far as classification of advances is concerned. The unserviced interest reversal is something which is subsequent to once you mark an account as NPA. Now when we talk about COVID-19 circular, that 3 months interest debit will slightly undergo change, which we will see in the subsequent slides. Now, one more important thing is that the definition of overdue is already given by RBI in its circular. What it says is, if an amount due to the bank under any credit facility, if it is not paid on the due date which is fixed by the bank, then the account will be classified as overdue account. So just to give an example, in the current financial year, since it is a leap year, suppose an installment is due on 1st of January. So in that case, the account will become overdue at the end of the day, that is at the end of 1st January. The reason being, the borrower was supposed to pay the installment on 1st of January. So if he has defaulted the payment on 1st of January, the counting of number of days will start right from there itself. Then another clarification which RBI has given is about accounts with temporary deficiencies. A typical case wherein non-renewal of advances has occurred or non-regulation of TODs has taken place. So in that case, what RBI specified is that in case if the account is not regularly renewed within 180 days from the original due date of that particular account, then that account will get classified as NPA on 181st day. To put it in simple words, any account which is not regularly renewed and the due date of renewal was up to say first half year, that is up to 30th September, then these accounts will get classified as NPA as on 31st March. Another clarification is about non-submission of stock statement. Now, as far as non-submission of stock statement is concerned, RBI has specified that a bank can make use of stock statement, that is a drawing forward drawn from stock statement for a further period of 90 days, and subsequent to that, you cannot make use of the particular stock statement. So just to give an example, for example, if you are having a stock statement which is submitted in the month of say September, so the September stock statement, you can make use of that particular stock statement for drawing for a purpose for next 90 days. So for October, November and December, you can make use of that DP, and subsequent to December, you cannot make use of that DP. So subsequently, there will not be any DP available, and by March end, the account will turn into an NP account. Then another point is that there are certain exceptions to the rule which RBI has specified. Like suppose advance is granted against fixed deposit receipts or KVPs, NACs or life insurance policy surrender value, that till the time the balance outstanding is not greater than the security value, then these accounts will be classified always as PA accounts. Similarly, in case of central government guaranteed accounts, these accounts will not be classified as NPA even though 90 days norms are fulfilled. So these accounts will be continued to be marked as PA, but subject to one condition, that interest which is recognized or income which is recognized on such accounts will be on realization basis. Another clarification which RBI has given is about co-borrower classification. In the sense, the classification should be borrower wise. So suppose you are having multiple facilities given to a particular borrower. If one of the facility is marked as NPA, rest all facilities will be marked as NPA except certain exception to this rule. One of the exception to the rule is that in case if you're having a LCBD facility sanction, then in that case, LCBD facility will remain as a standard asset, because in case of LCBD facility, the exposure is always taken on the bank and not on the borrower. Then RBI has given some stringent guidelines about straightaway classification norms, wherein erosion in value of the security is going beyond 50% of the erosion. So in that case, you have to classify that account straight away as doubtful asset category without waiting for 90 days norms. Similarly, in case of secured loans, in case if you're having a ledger balance and if you compare a ledger balance with the security value which is available, so if the security value is less than 10% of the ledger balance, then the account is required to be classified straight away as loss asset category. And similarly, on the same grounds, in case of fraud cases, you have to make 100% provision against that, irrespective of the security which is available against that. Another point which is a little subjective, I should say, is that In case of solitary or few credit entries which are recorded just before the balance sheet date and they are regularizing the account, then the auditor has to test that account as to whether the account is having any inherent weakness or not. So in case of inherent weaknesses, there is a little subjectivity which is really there. So in case of inherent weakness, auditor has to take a call based on merits of each and every case. Now, as far as year-end regulation is concerned, if the auditor is satisfied on the basis of documentary evidences produced before him that the credit entries are out of genuine sources, then he can always say that the regulation was a normal one, and he can say that the account is PA. In case if the regulation has been out of loans which have been procured by the borrower or maybe the promoters of the borrower entity, and then the account is getting regularized, then an auditor should not conclude that it is regularized out of the regular sources, and the account can be very well marked as a NP account. Now, as far as inherent weakness concept is concerned, if an auditor is little unsure about whether there is an inherent weakness exists in that account or not, he can always seek a clarification and representation from the bank side. If he's satisfied by the representation, he can always say that these accounts are having they are not having an inherent weakness, and then he can mark those accounts as PA. Otherwise, if he's not satisfied these accounts being a normal account, in the sense account with inherent weakness, he can go and mark those accounts as NPA. Then as far as mandatory valuation security norms are concerned, in case of all NPA accounts which are having exposures beyond 5 crores, once in 3 years mandatory valuation norm is there for all accounts which are over than 5 crores. And secondly, on year basis, a stock audit is required to be conducted for all such accounts. But these mandatory norms are applicable only for accounts which are having exposures above 5 crores. Below that, there is no mandatory norm. Then there are projects under implementation norms which are there, and their auditor has to pay attention to the DCCO, which is defined at the time of sanction of loan, and some RBI relaxation which have been given in terms of extension of DCCO. Just a couple of points which are important in this aspect, that as far as projects under implementation are concerned, in case suppose a particular project is not able to start or commence the commercial operations at the defined DCCO, then the account will turn into NPA, irrespective of whether the account is regular or not. So that is one thing which is important, and one has to take that into account. As far as income recognition and provisioning norms are concerned, there is no change which has really occurred. So for PA account, income will be recognized on accrual basis. As far as NP accounts are concerned, income will be recognized on the realization basis or cash basis. Now, as far as the restructuring of advances is concerned, the moment you restructure any advance, that particular advance is required to be downgraded, except the relaxation which is given by RBI in certain specific cases. Now, Annexure 5 to the Master Circular defines what is meant by restructure account. So, restructure account is one where the bank, for economic or legal reasons relating to the borrower's financial difficulty, grants to the borrower concessions that the bank would not otherwise have considered. So what the definition speaks about is whenever there is a concession granted to the borrower on the basis of borrower's financial difficulties, that can turn that account into a restructure advance account. Now, which are the exception to the rule? The exception is that in case of, let's take an example that you are having a borrower account wherein say 12% rate of interest is granted, and the borrower is getting a better offer from some other bank, maybe of say 10%. Now, in that case, the bank can very well reduce that 12% rate to match that, the market offer of 10%, and that cannot be called as a restructure account. So a restructure account will be necessarily an account wherein there is a concession which is extended to the borrower due to the borrower's financial difficulties, and otherwise an account will not be turned into a restructured account. Typically, in case of restructure account, the financial concessions are extended either in the form of maybe ballooning of installments, maybe extension of installment period, that is a tenure, or maybe the EMI amount being undergoing a change, or maybe rate of interest is reduced. But suppose you're having a CCD account which is getting converted into a drop line OD account, or maybe a case wherein the CCD accounts are getting converted to a term loan account, then in that case it cannot be called as a restructuring, because in fact there is a prepayment of amount to the bank, from the borrower side. Then 7 June circular I already touched upon. It is applicable only to the borrower accounts which are above 1,500 crores. Another important factor is that what RBI has been persistently telling to the banks is about the concept of auto marking of NPAs. And what is expected from the CBS system is that the CBS system of the bank should be robust enough to ensure that the banks are marking the accounts as NPA on a continuous basis, that is on the daily basis. So at the end of the day, if our account is fulfilling the conditions for marking that account as NPA, then the account will get converted from PA status to NPA status. So there is no concept of periodic marking which is there. It's a continuous process which the banks are supposed to follow. And as far as I am aware about, all the banks have given consent to Reserve Bank of India by stating that all the CBS systems are equipped with auto marking of NPA which is inbuilt in the system itself. Now let's see MSME relief circular, and then we'll see the COVID circular, and then we'll take up the case laws. Now, as far as 11th February circular is concerned, it is issued in continuation of 1st January circular. It's a one-time relaxation given to restructuring of MSME standard accounts without that account being downgraded. So the first condition which RBI set out is aggregate exposure in fund-based and non-fund-based limits of the borrower to all banks and NBFCs should not exceed 25 crores as on 1st January 2019. And here RBI is talking about the exposure, and the RBI is not referring to the balance outstanding. Then the second condition is that the borrower account should be a standard account as on 1st January 2020, and till the date of implementation of restructuring, it should remain in standard asset category. So suppose the account is not a standard account on the 1st January, that is, it is NPA as on 1st January, but subsequently it might have upgraded in the sense it has fulfilled, it has paid back the entire overdue portion maybe on say 10th of January. Still, that particular account will not be eligible for this particular circular. Third one is that the borrower entity is required to be registered on the date of implementation of restructuring, except for those which are exempted from GST registration. So here the registration under GST is something which is required to be taken by the borrower before the date of implementation of restructuring. So that is not a prerequisite, but that is a prerequisite that he has to obtain GST registration before implementation of restructuring package. Fourth one is that the restructuring of borrower accounts is required to be implemented on or before 31st December 2020. So the 1st January circular was talking about cutoff date of 31st March 2020. That has got extended. Otherwise, there is no change in this particular criteria. And the accounts which are restructured prior to 1st January 2019 by earlier circular, those will not be eligible. Additional provision of 5% will be required to be made, and that is required to be continued till the time that particular borrower account is demonstrating a satisfactory performance. The definition of satisfactory performance is also given. It says that no payment should be overdue for more than 30 days during the period of 1 year from the date when first interest or installment is due. So if this condition is fulfilled, that 5% additional provision can be very well reversed by the bank. And post restructuring, normal NPA norms will be applicable. Seventh point is about what is required to be disclosed by the bank. So banks are required to disclose the number of accounts which are restructured under this MSME circular, and they have to specify the amount outstanding. And in case of if the restructure account is downgraded as NPA as per the IRAC norms, the same will be eligible for upgradation only if it is demonstrating a satisfactory performance during the specified period, or it is extinguishing all the overdue portion in that particular downgrading reasons. Then we'll come to the circular, that is 27 March 2020 circular. And there are certain ifs and buts about the circular. So I will try to touch upon all the controversial issues, and I will try to express my views. My views need not gel with everyone's view, but I will try to elaborate my point as much as possible. See, the purpose of this circular, which RBI stated, is that the circular is issued to mitigate the burden of debt servicing brought about due to the disruption on account of COVID-19 pandemic, and it is to ensure the continuity of the viable business. So that is the purpose. Relief has been given by RBI into three forms. One is the reschedulement of payment of term loan has been granted. Similarly, working capital facilities also, there is a reschedulement of interest which is permitted. Easing of working capital finance is the second relief, and third one is from relaxation of classification from SMA and NPA to a limited extent, not to a greater extent. So let's start with the first one, that what is the relief granted to term loans. Now the definition of term loan or term loan dues, they have specified that will include all EMIs interest, principal payments, bullet payments, and credit card dues also. So apart from that, whatever type of advances the borrower is availing, that is not getting covered under this particular circular. So just to give an example, LCBD facilities are out of this particular picture. Now, what is the relief which is granted by RBI? The first relief is that RBI has permitted that the borrower is permitted to grant, or rather the bank is permitted to grant a moratorium period of 3 months on payment of all installments to all types of term loans which are falling due between 1st March 2020 and 31st May 2020. And accordingly, the residual tenure of the account would be extended to the extent of such moratorium period granted. So first and foremost thing is that any amount or any installment which is due prior to 1st March 2020, this relief is not available. Second point is that the residual tenure of the account will be extended to that extent. What it means is, presuming that 3 months extension is granted, so the residual tenure will get extended by 3 months, and because of that, it will amount to EMIs undergoing a change. The reason being, the interest which is falling or getting debited to the account between 1st March to 31st May, so that interest will be required to be accommodated for the rest of the tenure. So once you add up that particular additional interest, that will amount to change in EMI. So the tenure cannot be extended beyond 3 months. So vice versa, or as a corollary of that, what it means is EMI will undergo change. Second one is, as far as working capital facilities are concerned, the relief given is the banks are permitted to defer the recovery of interest applied on working capital finance facilities during the period of 1st March 2020 up to 31st May 2020, which would thus be considered as accrued but not due. Now, what does this mean is, any interest which is getting debited to the account after 1st March, that will be presumed to be accrued but not due, and that will become due once this 1st March and 31st March period gets over. So on 1st of June, the entire portion of interest which is getting debited to the account for the period of 3 months will become due. Now, this is in turn is getting having impact on out of order status. If you recall the out of order status conditions which we were discussing, one of the condition was to compare the interest debited in the account with the credit submission. So for this particular quarter, since the March interest is accrued but not due, we need to compare January and February interest in comparison with the credit submission during the last quarter, that is January to March quarter. But in the subsequent quarter, that is a quarter of April to June 20, what will happen is, you need to compare 4 months interest, that is March, April, May and June interest with credit summation in that particular quarter. So if the credit submissions are more than that, then you can definitely have that particular classification effective. Okay. Then the next one is about easing of working capital finance. Now, easing of working capital finance is not really going to affect your asset classification, but let me just touch upon that. What I have stated is, the circular is giving a discretion to the lending institutions regarding reduction in margin. So 25% margin, 40% margin, that can be reduced. The working capital cycle can be reassessed during the period up to 31st May. So maybe age-wise book dates eligibility might be revised by the banks, and that will have a limited extent, impact to the extent of method of calculation of DP. As such, it will not affect your NPA classification. Now, a few things which are very important is that this particular circular, even though it is talking about SMA or NPA, the circular is giving a relief to the borrowers that because of any dues which are due after 1st of March, the asset classification, whether it is SMA or whether it is NPA, it will not undergo change. It is not at all talking about anything which was due or accrued and due up to 29 February 2020. So the downgrading or the relaxation from downgrading is only to the limited extent for the accounts or for the dues which are subsequent to 1st of March and not prior to that. There are a few questions which have remained unanswered with respect to this circular. First thing is that the circular is whether the circular is applicable only to the borrowers which are affected by COVID-19. According to me, actually each and every borrower is said to be affected by COVID-19, but the sounding of the circular is a little different. Secondly, there is little ambiguity and different banking practices which are followed about applicability of circular to all borrowers, or whether the borrower has to opt for availing this particular benefit. Another point is that the extension of tenure, it will result in change of EMI. So that is going to be impacting the ECS instructions and standing instructions which have been given. We don't have any answer to that as to how the banks are going to tackle that. Similarly, as far as documentation is concerned, the documentation part will be also required to be seen from legal side as to whether there is any additional documentation is really required in case this extension is granted. Another important factor is that as far as DP calculation is concerned, RBI is silent about how to give the relaxation of working capital cycle as to whether the book trade should be considered only up to a particular dates, like 120 days, 180 days, or whatever it is. The circular is silent as on now. There is no clarification which has got issued. One interesting thing which has happened is I am just quoting the communication of Reserve Bank of India to IBA on 31st March. And the communication is very clear that nowhere in that particular communication, RBI is saying that there is a relaxation given to the earlier overdues or earlier defaults. So what it means is any default which is occurring prior to 1st of March, that default will not get covered by COVID-19 circular. So there is no relaxation of NPA norms as such, which is going to happen. So this was just a brief one. I thought that it can be a refreshing thing. So now we'll start off with the case study. Case study number 1. In case of a term loan account, a borrower has prepaid, in a couple of installments earlier, that is 12 months EMI in the month of April itself, and subsequently he hasn't paid any amount in that particular term loan account. Whether that account will be required to be classified as NPA due to non-servicing of interest. So the answer is that in case of term loan, the account will be classified as NPA only if interest or installment remains overdue for a period of 90 days. So in this instant case, since there is a prepayment of EMI, your ledger balance will be always lesser than your ideal DP. And since the account is not overdue, the account will be always classified as PA. Servicing of interest concept does not apply to term loan accounts. The second case law, in case of a CCOD facility, an account is operated within the limit, but there are no credits in the said account since 1st of January. Would such account be required to be classified as NPA even though it is not overdrawn for a single day? Yes, the account will be definitely required to be classified as NPA as the account is out of order since there are no credits in the said account for 90 days as on balance sheet date. As there are no credits, then definitely the criteria of out of order is fulfilled and the account will be required to be marked as NPA. Then the third one is that in case of an NPA account, in case of a CCOD facility, an account is operated within the limit, but the summation of credits in the account for the last quarter of January to March are lesser than interest debited during the said quarter. What would be the classification of such account, especially in the background of COVID-19 circular? As we already discussed, the comparison of interest should be January and February interest, which should be compared with the credit summation during the last quarter, that is March 20 quarter. And in case if the credit summation is more than January and February interest, then the account will be classified as PA. If not, the account will be required to be classified as NPA. The fourth case study, in case of CCOD facility, an account has credit balance for a period of first 10 days of the quarter, but does not have any credits during the said quarter. Would the account be classified as NPA if the account is in debit balance as at March end? Now, this particular case, the account will be still required to be classified as NPA because it is fulfilling the condition of not having any credits during the last 90 days as on a cutoff date. The fifth case is, in case of a CC facility, if the last stock statement submitted is of October 19, would the said account be classified as NPA due to the non-submission of statement as at March 20? Now, if you refer to para 4.2.4 of Master Circular, the classification of advances is required to be based on the record of recovery, and any deficiencies which are temporary in nature, like non-submission of stock statement, need not be considered to classify that account as NPA. At the same time, you need to also see the next part. RBI stated that nevertheless, considering the difficulties of large borrowers, stock statements relied upon by the banks for determining DP should not be older than 3 months. Now here RBI is making a specific reference to difficulties of large borrower. So according to my view, if the account is your view is the account is a large borrower account, then you can make use of October stock statement for DP calculation purpose to the extent of next 90 days, that is November, December and January. And after that, since it's only 60 days which are getting over, the account will remain into PA category. If you feel that the account is not a large borrower account, then in that case, the account will be definitely required to be turned into an NPA account. And of course, you need to consider the other factors also besides this non-submission of stock statement, like conduct of account, the overall quality of stock, and other details which have been produced to you. So considering all these details, you can mark that account as PA or NPA. The next case study is that in case of a CC facility, is short review twice for a period of 90 days each. That is firstly from July 19 to September 19, and then from October 19 to December 19. Would the said account be classified as PA or NPA as at March 20 end, if the same is not renewed till that time? Yes, the account will be definitely required to be classified as NPA since the same is not regularly renewed within 180 days from the original due date, and this counting of 180 days is from original due date, not from the end of short review period. The next case study is about SSA account, that is substandard account. That you are having a substandard account wherein one of the underlying securities in the form of fixed deposit receipt to the extent of 50% of the ledger balance. What would be the BDDR requirement? As far as RBI norms are concerned, the RBI norms specify that for secured substandard loan, the provision of BDDR will be required at the rate of 15%. It doesn't give any dispensation about the portion which is getting covered by FDs. Then the next case study is about term loan. A term loan account has 4 EMIs overdue as on November 19, and subsequently there is a partial recovery made in the account. However, 2 installments have always remained overdue for rest of the period till March 20. Would this account be required to be classified as NPA as at March 20 end? As this account is having 4 EMIs overdue as at November end, that is November 19, the account will be firstly required to be classified as NPA on 91st day. So typically say November end. And subsequently, since there is only a partial recovery made, the account will be continued to be under NPA category, and the account cannot be upgraded because of partial recovery. One more important point is that if the bank is not classifying such accounts as NPA, as an auditor, you can very well classify this account as NPA with an NPA date of November 19. The next case is a term loan account is having 4 EMIs overdue as on 31st March 2020, and subsequently the entire overdues are recovered on 8th April 2020. That is before signing of balance sheet by the statutory auditors. Would this account be required to be classified as NPA as at March end? It's a typical case and always a debatable point. My view is that as the account was having 4 EMIs overdue as on 31st March 2020, subsequent recoveries cannot be considered to give effect as on March end. So the account will remain into NPA category as on 31st March 2020. And since the account holder has repaid the entire overdues on 8th of April, from 8th of April onward, that account will be classified as PA. The reason being, the subsequent recoveries which are made cannot be considered to be events occurring after the date of balance sheet. So the account will remain into NPA category. Another similar case study, that a term loan is having 4 EMIs overdue as on 31st March, and the account gets closed on 8th of April 2020 before you sign off the balance sheet. Again, here my view is that the account remains into NPA category, because whether the account is closed or whether it is regularized, it really doesn't matter, because you have to certify on the basis of the status of account as on 31st March. And RBI in its circular has nowhere specified that subsequent recoveries are required to be factored in. There is a mention of 30 days period in the RBI circular, but that mention is about clarifying the doubts related to NPA classification. That 30 days period is not for recovery of any amount. Just for academic discussion, let me just add one more point. That in case if you start factoring in the subsequent recoveries, then as a corollary of that, if any account turns into NPA subsequent to 31st March, let's say on 5th of April, 90 days period is getting over. Now, practically, no one will, ask the bank to mark such accounts as NPA. So we have to be fair on both the sides. Whatever is the status of the account is there on 31st March. Based on that, the classification norm should be applied. The next case is a term loan account is having 4 EMIs overdue as on 31st December 2019, and it was accordingly marked as NPA. Subsequently, entire overdues are recovered on 20th February, and there are no overdues in the account as on the said date, that is 20th February. Would this account be eligible for upgradation to PA, or should it remain under NPA category for a further period of 1 year? The account will be definitely eligible for upgradation on 20th February itself, provided that at the end of the day, there are no overdues in the account. And that 1 year period reference is related to satisfactory performance related to restructured accounts. So if our account is regularly, is paying the installments and clearing of the overdues, the account will be immediately upgraded. You don't have to wait for any further period. A GST registered MSME account was classified as NPA, and the same has repaid the overdue portion in entirety in February 20. Accordingly, was classified as PA. Can the said account be restructured in? Sorry, it's a typographical error. So can the said account be restructured in March 20 without downgrading as per the RBI circular dated 11 February? Now the 11 February circular is very specific that the account has to be standardized on 1st of January 2020. So any subsequent upgradation will not make that borrower eligible to take benefit of that restructuring. In case of a CC facility, the bank has not charged penal interest and processing fees applicable as per the terms of sanction. If the said penal interests are charged on the respective dates, the account would be continuously overdrawn for a period of more than 90 days, considering validating effect of such penal interest. Would such account be classified as NPA with the validating effects of such revenue leakages? Actually, technically, the validating of such revenue leakages should be considered for the purpose of review and monitoring of the account and consideration of the continuously overdrawn status. The classification of an account should be on the basis of record of recovery, unless the revenue leakage or postponement of charges is appears to be an intentional one. Just to give an example, suppose you observe that the regular renewal charges, which otherwise the branch was regularly debiting to all the borrower accounts, but because of an account getting converted into overdue account or overdrawn account, the bank has purposefully or intentionally has deferred debiting those charges to that account. So if you feel that that is an intentional one, then you can always give a validating effect and then test that account for a continuously overdrawn concept. So it depends upon how you perceive that particular condition about whether it is intentional or unintentional. So there will be a little kind of subjectivity is there. But if you ask me technically, you as an auditor, you have every right to consider that with a validating effect. Next one is in case of working capital finance facilities, if the trade creditors are more than book debts and stock, but are below the level of trade creditors as specified in CMA data, would there be a drawing power available for the said borrower? Now, this has been this is a query which has got debated over the period, and everyone, all bankers as well as auditors are having different interpretations. Now, even the banks are having varied practices of calculation of DP, and auditor needs to review the terms of sanction of working capital finance, wherein the drawing power calculation method would be always prescribed. However, prima facie, if you ask me, if a borrower is having a negative working capital, the question of availability of DP should not arise. Another point is that as far as that CMA level trade creditors concept is concerned, the reference is in some old RBI circular, I think 93 or 96 dated circular. Now, when you are applying or using that particular line in that circular, which says that in case if the trade creditors are more than CMA level creditors, then only you have to reduce that. You need to also understand another point. When you are picking up this particular line, you have to also presume that the CMA level debtors as well as stock level is also maintained. So if on one hand, if you are having CMA level stock and book debts are not maintaining that particular level, you cannot make use of this particular line. So you have to apply the circular logically. A borrower had availed OD against a property to the tune of 5 crores against the primary security of immovable property of 20 crores. Subsequently, the property was subjected to valuation and the present value of property is 8 crores. Would this account be required to be classified as a doubtful asset even though the outstanding balance is 2 crores? The account will be required to be classified as doubtful asset category because there is a erosion in value beyond 50%. So even though the account is well within the limit, well within the DP, still the account will be subjected to straightaway classification norms, which are specified in para 4.2.9, and the account will be required to be downgraded to doubtful asset category. Post COVID-19 circular, the bank has granted relaxation for repayment of March 20 installment to the borrower and has deferred it by 3 months. However, the borrower is having EMI of term loan, which was due on 1st of January and 1st of February 2020. which have remained unpaid as at 31st March 2020, what would be the classification of term loan? The COVID-19 circular is providing relaxation to a limited extent in terms of deferment of installments which are falling due between 1st March to 31st May. So the circular per se does not grant any concession to installments which were due prior to that. And it doesn't also grant any relief from IRAC norms. So the account will be required to be marked as NPA as at 31st March 2020, as EMI due on 1st January is overdue for more than 90 days as on 31st March 2020. Then another case is there. ABC Enterprises is a partnership firm with A, B, and C as its partners. Term loan of ABC Enterprises is marked as NPA by the bank, but the bank does not mark the housing loans availed by partner A, as the same is regular in terms of repayment and is not overdue beyond 90 days. Do the bank is required to mark housing loan of partner A as NPA? Will situation change if the property given as security for housing loan is taken as collateral for loan extended to partnership firm? Now here ABC Enterprises as a partnership firm and partner A as an individual, both are different persons. So borrower wise classification norms will not get extended to loan of partner A in his individual capacity. So bank is correct in classification of advance. Now even though the security might be common, it will not undergo any asset classification change. So even if you're having the same security for say ABC Enterprises as well as partner A, still the classification will be borrower wise and not security wise. So the bank is right in doing the classification of advance, at least in this particular case. Another case is a large variance is there in case of drawing power of CC account observed in calculation of DP as per March stock statement and as per audited financials. What auditor should be doing in this scenario? If you ask me actually, then what I feel is that the auditor needs to seek a clarification regarding the large variance, and based on the clarification or justification received, he has to also take into factor the overall conduct of the account and then should take a call regarding classification of such CC accounts. The reason being, if you're having a wide variance of stock statement DP and audited balance sheet DP, firstly you need to seek a clarification. If you don't get any clarification or if you don't get justifiable clarification, you can go further and maybe apply the same yardstick about the deviation, that is the difference between both the DPs, and extend it for the entire year. But at the same time, you need to also see what is the conduct of the account, and based on that you need to take a call. So it's not exactly yes and no kind of answer which can be given over here. Then there are a few points are there which I will like to just go through, and then we can take other case laws. First thing is that RBI AFI has been consistently giving cases of divergences of NPA, and in the current year, Reserve Bank of India has wrote a letter to CA Institute also. The letter is already published on AASB's website. That particular letter is talking about divergences of NPA, and RBI has made certain points clear, like partial recovery of account, subsequent recovery of account. So RBI is very clear about the reasons for divergences, and whatever stands the auditors have been taking since years, those have been kind of supported by that particular letter. Another important factor which as an auditor one has to look at is whenever you are verifying the implementation of RBI circulars, always have a cross check on parameterization in CBS system. So I'm not just talking about purity of master data in CBS, but also functional working of CBS. As far as COVID-19 circular is concerned, or MSME relief circular is concerned, the CBS is yet to be equipped with the revised version. So wherever you are doing the audit, first verify whether the CBS is equipped to take care of all the regulations which RBI has issued recently. Another point is about authenticity and regularity of stock statement. There are a lot of issues which are arising out of stock statement. So on case-to-case basis, or I should say on merit basis, you need to take a call about that. And based on that, you can mark that account as PA or NPA. You can also refer to circular on frauds, that is a master circular on frauds, which is issued by RBI, wherein there is a categoric comment is there. Then in case if it is proved that the fictitious stock statements are submitted by the borrower, then that particular account is required to be considered as an account wherein the fraud has occurred. So just make use of that particular line also. As far as date of NPA is concerned, couple of important points. Whenever you are verifying NPA statement for the current year, also make it a point to compare the date of NPAs of the earlier certified NPA statement as to whether the NPA dates have been correctly continued or not. Next important point is UCIC concept, that is unique customer ID concept. By now, I think most of the banks have implemented UCIC concept with an effective way. But still, as an auditor, you need to be vigilant about that no borrower is having multiple cust IDs. As an auditor, you need to pay more attention or more focused attention to the accounts which have been upgraded during the year. And in those accounts, you need to ensure that the reason or lacuna because of which the account was downgraded to NPA category, whether that has been completely removed or not. So if it is completely removed, you can always say that the account is PA. Let me just quote a classic case about that. So let's presume that we are having a term loan and CCOD facility. Maybe say 3 term loans are there, 1 CCOD facility is there. So in case of term loan, one of the term loan is having a lacuna wherein more than 3 installments are overdue and the bank has marked that account as NPA. So subsequently, that particular term loan account is regularized, but at the time of regularization, some other account is overdue, in the sense overdrawn. In case of CCOD or term loan, 1 or 2 installments are overdue. Now in that case, even though the original account is regularized, since as a borrower, since there are some portion of amount which is still remaining overdue, the account will be required to be continued in the NPA category. So you need to be vigilant about which regulation has really occurred. Regulation of accounts subsequent to balance sheet date, we already discussed that it has no impact on classification of advances as on 31st March. Then accounts which are under others or sundry accounts or suspense account, it might happen that there are some accounts which have been parked over there. So you need to pay attention to that. Just to give an example, like in case of LC devolvement, if devolved LC is parked in sundry account or suspense account, you need to take care of that devolved amount, and you have to give effect of that devolved amount in the main account of that particular borrower. In some branches, you might observe that the accounts are transferred from one branch to another branch. So in that case, auditor needs to be vigilant about the control over identification and classification of advance. There should not be any accommodation which should have occurred because of these cases. Another point is the early mortality cases. You need to be really vigilant about early mortality cases. These are the cases wherein the account is turning into NPA account within a period of 12 months from the date of disbursement of sanction of that particular loan. Evergreening of account is again a common case. That there are various ways of evergreening which has been witnessed in the banking sector. Just to give 2 examples, is like a company is having an account, a private limited company is having an account which is in default. So to regularize that account, a personal loan might be sanctioned to the directors. The directors might bringing that money to a company account and account gets regularized. Now here even though there are 2 different borrowers are there, it's a kind of evergreening exercise which the bankers have indulged into, and the account will be required to be marked as NPA. One more important variety of account product which I would like to state over here. Of late, actually, there are a couple of banks which have started giving a flexible housing loan product. So let me just first tell you about that product, and let me tell you where the issue lies. There are banks which are granting housing loans which are in the form of overdraft facility, or rather drop line OD facility. So let me just give you a simple example. That suppose a particular borrower has availed say a loan of say 15 lakhs, which is a housing loan under this particular product, which is payable in say next 15 years. So every year he's paying a EMI, and gradually the loan amount balance is getting reduced. So that's a normal product. But some banks are having a specialized product wherein what they do is they keep such accounts of housing loan accounts as a OD facility. They issue a checkbook against that facility also. And similar to EMI facility, what they do is the DP in those accounts gets reduced over the period of 15 years. So it becomes a kind of a drop line OD facility, which is in the form of housing loan. Now, what has been observed is the bank which is sanctioning this kind of product, what they do is they categorize this particular account as housing loan. So they apply the yardstick of IRAC norms, which is applicable to term loan accounts. So what they do is, as at any particular date, they see that how many number of installments are overdue. So suppose there is a case wherein always there is a one installment which has always remained overdue. So the account, such accounts are always marked as PA by these banks. Now in reality, what happens is all these accounts are in the form of overdraft product, that is OD product, because the checkbook is also sanctioned. So it's a drawing product. Now in such cases, the yardstick which is required to be applied is the yardstick which is applicable to CCOD accounts. So even though one installment is in arrears, what it means is the account is in continuously in overdrawn position for last 90 days, and these accounts will be required to be marked as NPA. So one should not, conveniently adopt different IRAC norms for different products. We need to understand as an auditor as to what is the real facility which is sanctioned by the bank. So if it is a OD facility, even though it might be a convenience which is given to the housing loan borrower accounts, we need to apply the yardstick of CCOD facility itself. Then as far as MOCs are concerned, couple of important points from my end about MOCs. First thing is that the MOCs related to NPA accounts are many a times little complex in nature. You need to input various details in that MOC. But as far as MOCs are concerned, there are a couple of important factors which you need to take care of. First thing is that whenever you are entering MOCs, especially of NPA accounts, the secured unsecured portion is one of the important factor which has to be specified. Secondly, even though you might not have any NPA classification query, but even if you are having a security value change query, that has to be routed through that MOC itself. So NPA classification might remain same, but the secured value portion might have undergone a change because of your audit process. So in that case also the same MOC is required to be specified. Another important factor is that under no circumstances LFAR should be considered as a replacement to main audit report. So suppose you are having any qualificatory remark which is appearing in LFAR, the same should get reflected in main audit report also. There should not be any reference of LFAR in main audit report, and there should not be any vague comments which should be there in main audit report. Your main audit report as well as LFAR should be crisp and clear. To the extent possible, you need to quantify the qualificatory remarks. Another important factor is that your LFAR remark, if they are considering, if they are specifying that certain MOCs are required to be passed for correction, then in that case, the comment in LFAR will not suffice the purpose. You need to also pass the MOC. Another important factor is that in all the banks, there is a materiality level which is set by central auditors. That materiality level is only for the purpose of passing of MOCs. It doesn't affect your NPA classification norms. So for NPA classification, there is no materiality level as such. So these are the cases which I thought that I should discuss with you. We can now take up the queries of the participants, and I will try to answer that to the best extent possible from my end. Over to the coordinators.
Hello. Thank you, Dhananjay ji. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Murtuza here. So मिश्रा जी, जो भी क्वेश्चन है वो थोड़ा शेयर करिए. Mishra ji is loading a screen, and Dhananjay ji, now you can see the questions on the screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I can see there are 16. Mishra ji, first question पे आएंगे. And let me also inform you, sir, that we had about 633 participants. So
Okay.
Congratulations, and I should thank all the participants. And sir, thank you very much for your time. And so normally, like when we do in the Kimji Kuwarji auditorium, we can handle only 250, 300 people. But hardly 125 people are there. But now on webinar, 600, 700 people are there in all the sessions. So sir, over to you to answer the question, sir.
Sure, sir. I will take the questions one by one. The first question is explain para 2.1.3 of NPA norms. That is, in case of interest payment, bank should classify an account as NPA only if the interest due and charged during any quarter is not serviced fully within 90 days from the end of the quarter. Let me just give an example for that with reference to March 20 audit. Last but one quarter, that is October to December quarter. Now, before that, let me first explain what is meant by this para 2.1.3 commentary. What is presumed over here is this is applicable only in cases of term loans where it's only interest is due. So these are the typical cases wherein there is a moratorium granted for principal repayment. So only interest is due. So in those cases, if the interest which is debited in a particular quarter, if it is not serviced in next 90 days, then only the account will turn into NPA. So suppose October to December interest is not serviced in next quarter, that is January to March quarter, then only the account will be NPA. Otherwise, the account will be PA. Now, again, just to reiterate, this is applicable only in cases wherein principal is not due. So these are the typical cases wherein only interest is due. Kindly explain NPA norms for agriculture advance, that is agriculture advance, allied agriculture advance, and ancillary agriculture advance. Lot of confusion about which falls for 90 days NPA and which for crop season. See, there is a 2015 circular which talks about farm credit. So there is a specific definition given in that particular circular as to what will be considered as farm credit. And as far as agricultural crop season norms are concerned, those are applicable only to those accounts which are fulfilling the conditions which are given in that farm credit definition. Rest all accounts, normal 90 days norms will be applicable. As far as crop seasons are concerned, for each state, there is a SLBC which has been formulated, state level banking committee. So the SLBC will define crop seasons for each and every state. So you have to go based on that crop. But I will tell you where the real problem arises. Many a times the farm credit availers, that is the borrowers, agriculture loan borrowers, they are specifying that they are taking mixed crops. So the moment they specify mixed crop, it becomes little difficult to analyze as to whether it is a short-term crop or whether it is a long-term crop. So that is one issue, which is again a subjective issue. No answer or no solution for that. Second issue is that as far as auto marking of NPAs is concerned, I have yet to see a bank which is able to really incorporate this particular part in real sense. I know that a couple of banks have tried to do that, but the reality has remained the same, that agriculture advances are generally getting marked based on manual systems. The auto marking is really not working in that. How can we find the value of land on present date? I think this is related to the mandatory valuation part. So I will just reiterate that. What RBI is specifying is as far as NPA accounts are concerned, which are which is having an outstanding balance of above 5 crores, once in 3 years valuation is required for immovable properties. So you don't have to really think about what is the valuation as on date. So suppose you're having a valuation certificate which is in last 3 months, you can presume that that is the value of value of property which is continued. In other cases, if you're having outstanding balance above 5 crores, but last 3 years, in last 3 months, 3 years, the valuation is not taking place. As an auditor, you have every right to ignore that valuation, and you can go to extent of taking that valuation as nil. What is co-borrower classification? Co-borrower classification means the classification of advances should be borrower-wise. So if one facility of the borrower is marked as NPA, then rest all facilities will be marked as NPA, subject to certain exceptions. One exception I already told, that if it is having a LCBD facility, that will remain as a standard asset. Let me add a couple of exceptions to this. Like suppose a borrower is having a normal term loan account which is marked as NPA, but is having another facility which is advance against FDs, which is well within the security value, that will continue to be a PA category loan. There is a third variety also as an exception, that let's presume that there is a restructuring process which is carried out, and as a part of nursing or restructuring process, there is a fresh loan which is granted to that particular borrower. So in that case, because of restructuring, the account would have been already downgraded, but the fresh loan will remain under PA category for next 12 months period. But otherwise, borrower-wise classification norms will be applicable for all exposures. Fifth question is, certain banks are allowing short review of account in place of complete renewal. How many short reviews can be done by branch, and NPA norms in case of short reviews? So as far as number of short reviews which a branch or bank can do, there is no bar on doing that. The bar is about classification of accounts. So short reviews for our purpose, in the sense for audit purpose, we can simply ignore that because that will be based on their own credit policies. So bank can very well have a credit policy wherein 3 short reviews are available or they are permitted. What we need to see is what is the NPA norm. The NPA norm is that if an account is not regularly renewed, within 180 days, the account will get marked as NPA. So whether the bank is doing a short review or not, that is immaterial. What you need to see is if the account is not regularly renewed, on 181st day, you need to mark that account as NPA. And that counting of 180 days will start from the original due date, not from the completion of short review of that particular account. Sixth question, in March 20, the listed shares fell significantly. Can we say that shares which fall down more than 50% advance against said shares will be classified as NPA? Technically, what you say is right. If there is a erosion in value beyond 50%, the account will be required to be marked as doubtful asset category. Now here, when you are considering the security value, you need to consider the security value of primary as well as secondary security. So presuming that your question is only limited to the extent of a case wherein the security is only the form of equity shares, and if there is a erosion in value beyond 50%, the account will be definitely be required to be marked as NPA. Question 7. An account which otherwise would have been NPA as on 10th March 2020, will it get benefit under COVID-19 circular and classified as NPA? See, as you have stated that the account would have been marked as NPA on 10th of March, I presume that on that particular day, either the account is continuously overdrawn for 90 days, if it is a CCOD facility, or it might be having the installments due beyond 90 days. So in that case, the account will be marked as NPA. COVID-19 circular doesn't give any extension to NPA marking. It is silent about that. Will the substandard account get benefit of these 3 months of 27 March circular if the account downgraded to substandard account in October 19? See, this circular will give that benefit of extension, but that will not improvise the position of any classification of account. So practically speaking, the account which is already substandard in October 19, that will remain in substandard category itself. The ninth question is, in case of CC, interest applied is 10,000 in January, 25,000 in February, 15,000 in March. The recovery is 15,000. Will it be marked as NPA? This account will be marked as NPA. The reason being, if you see the summation of interest debit in the last quarter, that is January and February, I'm ignoring March because it is accrued but not due because of COVID circular. So the summation is 35,000. So against 35,000, if you are having a credit summation of just 15,000, the account will be marked as NPA. What is the time gap between classification of account as NPA and initiation of confiscation of property by the bank for realization of cash? Being auditor, what are the responsibilities with respect to the issue? See, there is no time gap which is really specified or which can be really defined in case of NPA account. All the banks are having their recovery policies. All the banks are equipped with legal remedies about that. As an auditor, you need to only see that whether the bank is exercising the or implementing the recovery policy and exercising all the legal remedies or not. If you feel that the branch or bank is not really going for recovery mechanism, or they are lenient or they are lethargic about implementation of the recovery policy, you can very well comment upon that. What will be the provision if valuation report of property is more than 3 years old? I already answered that, but let me just repeat that. If the valuation of property is more than 3 years old, as an auditor, you have every right to ignore that particular valuation. And you can always say that unless and until the valuation report is available to you, you are considering the value as nil. This is extreme stand which I am saying, but that is the right which you are having as auditor. And ultimately, you need to decide about whether you want to take the valuation which is more than 3 years old, maybe with a discounting part, or maybe say 50%, 60%, 70% of that as a value. But according to me, you can go to the extent of considering that value as nil, but the choice will be yours. MSME restructuring, MSME interest subvention circular, MSME registration is must or bank classifies the MSME will do. So as far as MSME restructuring circular is concerned, RBI nowhere has stated that MSME registration is required. So what my view is that bank has to demonstrate before you as to why that particular borrower account is classified or considered as MSME by that particular bank. So it should have a circumstantial evidence to your satisfaction. If you're satisfied that the account is MSME, you can very well go for that. If you're not, you should not go for that. If any working capital facility, that is cash credit, is due for renewal in the last week of March, what will be the status if renewal documents are not submitted by the borrower? Plus, we have to consider total credits in June 20 equal to or more than interest of March, April, May cumulative. Okay, I will answer both the questions. As far as facility which is due for renewal in the last week of March, even if the facility is not renewed, there is no impact on classification of advance. It will only come as a comment in LFR because the renewal is not crossing the mark of 180 days. So it will only attract the LFR comment. And as far as credit summation of June 20 is concerned, you are rightly said that it will consider March, April, May, and also June interest, and that you have to compare. There is a little practical issue when we apply this particular yardstick. So let me just speak it out, even though the query is not there. So let's presume that every month there is an interest of 10 rupees. So from January to June, we'll presume that 10 rupees is the interest. And let's presume that there is an account which is having credit summation of 35 rupees in the month of in the quarter of March and 35 rupees in the quarter of June. Now in that case, what will happen is in the quarter of March, actually the account will be naturally a PA account because 20 rupees will get compared with 35 rupees. But in the next quarter, what will happen is if we consider 40 rupees of interest and if we compare that with 35 rupees, the account will turn into NPA. So the bank and auditor both they have to apply this yardstick logically. And the case which I quoted, like having 35 rupees of credit, I feel that the account should be a PA account because it is something wherein the benefit of COVID-19 circular is not taken by that particular borrower. Then the 14th question, whether we can deduct loan accounts which are NPA as on 31st March 2020, subsequently closed or overdue amount completely recovered from genuine sources before signing off our audit report. I already discussed this particular point, but let me just repeat that. Whenever any recovery of overdue portion is there subsequent to 31st March 2020, or the account might be closed subsequent to 31st March 2020, it should not affect the asset classification as on 31st March 2020. So whatever is the status is there as on 31st March 2020, you have to go by that. And any subsequent recovery that cannot be considered as events occurring after the date of balance sheet. So the account will remain into NPA category, irrespective of whether it is received from genuine sources or not. The only barring cases or maybe favorable cases might be that if a particular borrower has deposited a check and the unclear status has got cleared subsequently without the check being bounced, then maybe some relief might be granted, but nothing beyond that. 15th question. Does the account be classified as NPA if installment entered in the system was wrong, say 10,000 rupees instead of 1 lakh? The installment is recovered as per the system from saving account of borrower. However, the sanction letter rightly mentions the installment as 1 lakh. Yeah, this is a typical question, and even I have faced this particular issue wherein the EMIs were wrongly entered in the system. Now, as far as a wrong entering of EMI in the system is concerned, I will talk about a little different point. So suppose a particular branch manager or maybe a particular bank is punching in or entering a wrong EMI, then ideally the CBS should alert that the wrong EMI has been entered. So according to me, if there is an error on the part of the branch, even though there is no default of the borrower as far as repayment is concerned, the account should be technically marked as NPA. There should not be any relaxation which is given as an auditor. As an auditor, we don't have any privy to give such relaxations. So whatever is there as per the sanction letter, that should prevail. The 16th question, if the borrower had CC facility from the bank, later due to inadequate DP, the bank converted the part of CC account into OD account against property. All the facility is well covered by the security. But in this case, working capital requirement of the borrower is lesser than the facility furnished by bank. So whether this is overfinancing by the bank and whether this will be NPA. Now here actually what you need to consider is that as you have specifying at the beginning that there is an inadequate DP is there, you need to go a little backwards and see that the inadequate DP was there for how much period. If it is going to convert that account into a continuously auto on account beyond 90 days, the account will naturally get marked as NPA. But presuming that the question is only about inadequate DP and the bank converts that inadequate DP portion into a OD against property, and then there is a term loan kind of a repayment or the facility is undergoing a change at the OD, You need to also see the conduct of account. You need to also see that whether the inherent weakness is existent in that account or not. So on case to case basis, you have to take a stand about that. But as far as inadequate DP is concerned, that is something which you need to go a little backward also and then take a call. Any further queries are there?
Murtuza bhai.
Mishra ji, anything else is there, Mishra ji? So, okay.
Murtuza
So
bhai,
let me. Yes, please.
Murtuza bhai, if you so permit, I have one small question.
Yes,
for
please.
Zinni. Sir, I have one doubt about this COVID-19 circular from the Reserve Bank of India. So my question is, if the MSME account which is already restructured,
okay,
barabar under the benefit of that relaxation by the Reserve Bank of India of that 4 circulars, right? And the restructuring package is implemented, and even that account also will be eligible for the deferment under this COVID-19. What is your opinion?
Yeah, my opinion is that, yeah, I got the point. Yes. That under MSME, the account has been restructured, and there are certain installments which are falling due after 1st of March. That is between March and May. That is the period. All these accounts are eligible, because what RBI is stating is, they are stating that in normal case, whatever is the amount which is falling due between this 1st March to 31st May, that will get deferred. So definitely all these MSME accounts, or even otherwise also, like in project loan also the restructuring might happen. So in all those cases, the deferment will definitely happen, and it will not be considered as second time restructuring. So those accounts will remain PA. Deferment benefit will be definitely available.
Right, sir. And one more, RBI is silent about the revenue recognition in case of this COVID-19 relief to the borrowers actually. So what the auditor should take on, or it will be with the banks to decide actually. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, actually, the accounts which are PA, in case of PA accounts, what will happen is in all these deferment cases, the interest will be accrued but not due. I'm talking about CCOD accounts. So in that case, since it is accrued, whether it is due or not, that becomes immaterial. So the income recognition will be definitely there for all PA accounts. There is no question about that. So income will definitely get recognized. And just to extend my point further, presuming that suppose a bank says that the income should not be recognized, or even an auditor says that the income should not be recognized, that will be a mismatching with your deposit interest, because your deposit interest is regularly getting accrued and getting expensed out. So to match that on your PA account, the interest will be definitely required to be recognized on accrual basis, even if it is not due.
If we go by this type of reliefs given by the Reserve Bank of India, in that case, they were very clear that the interest should not be recognized, that should be recognized on the face basis. And under this package, the RBI is silent about the revenue recognition. That was the doubt in mind.
Yeah.
That was the case.
Right. So since it is silent, I agree. I agree. But since it is silent, we cannot touch upon that accrual concept.
Absolutely.
Because then we will be changing that we'll change that from accrual to realization basis. That will be a change in policy, accounting policy. That will not be right.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Over to Murtuza bhai, please.
Thank you, Hitesh bhai, for your questions and also for organizing this whole bank audit series, Hitesh bhai, at the right time. I also would like to thank the WRC staff, Mishra ji for technically helping us, Seema for sending out the mails, etc., Ravi Arora, Subhash and Vaibhav as well. And I would also want to thank Manish Gadia ji, because we all know it is very difficult for the WRC staff to go up to BKC, and Manish bhai has allowed his office, and every day we are doing this webinars from his office at Andheri. So Manish bhai, thank you. And now Manish bhai, over to you for giving out a formal vote of thanks, Manish bhai.
Thank you, Murtuza bhai, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, I thank Dhananjay Gokhale sir. He has taken us through IRACA norms and taken NPA case studies, practical case studies, what we are facing. And he has also covered the resolution, various circular issued in respect of relaxation has been given in respect of COVID-19. And in last, he has given some practical tips while doing audit relating to NPA norms and answering all the queries. So I request all the participants to give a vote of thanks with loud applause. Apart from him, I also thank for Hitesh Pomal for immediately structuring the entire series for bank audit webinar. And also thanks Murtaja Bhai. He has really worked very hard for starting of this series on webinar, and continuously on a daily basis, he is leading that series, coordinating with the speaker, technical team, everything. So hats off to Murtaja Bhai, and thank you very much to all the participants for showing interest and showing trust on the WIRC. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.